Good Friday afternoon and welcome to the I Love CVille Show. Thank you for joining us on a glorious day to be alive across Charlottesville, Albemarle County, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world. Judah Wickower is our fantastic director. Great to have him being the North Star writing today's ship. Peter Krebs will join us in about 5 minutes on today's program to talk quite a bit of stuff that's been in the news of late. I thought yesterday's program fairly strong, fairly impactful. Angela Lynn and Nancy Gill on yesterday's show. Nancy Gill, the one-time mayor of Scottsville. Angela Lynn, her husband, impacted by a bicycle accident in Albemarle County, in western Albemarle to be in fact, where he was on his bicycle on a windy road and he was going around a blind turn and ran into a parked mail truck, causing significant spinal cord injury to him and an injury that his family is managing now moving forward. Nancy Gill was the former mayor of Scottsville. She had a niece, a VMI graduate, who died from a bicycle accident in Henrico, Virginia. So a couple of things I want to highlight before getting to Peter Krebs. Two ideas that I thought were very realistic in Albemarle County, two ideas that were very realistic for Central Virginia from yesterday's interview were these, and these are realistic from a financial standpoint. Getting better signage across Albemarle and across Central Virginia when it comes to roads that are heavily trafficked by bicyclists, cyclists, pedestrians, and runners. We have some signage in Albemarle, but that signage allotment can certainly improve, and that's something that's not going to break the bank. I thought another idea that came from yesterday's interview that I think should be in the conversation would be creating a trail in Albemarle, and I'm not talking like a trail through the woods. I'm talking something like the Charlottesville Ale Trail or 151, the Blue Ridge Trail, kind of like a branded or marketed or advertised trail. And this trail is a roadway in Albemarle that's dotted by breweries and wineries. So you can start bicycling or walking or cycling or running along this trail, and you have various stops that are breweries and wineries. If we create such a trail and then we brand it and advertise it and market said trail, a commuter, a motorist, a cyclist, a runner will know this is the path, this is the trail, these are the roadway systems that cyclists and runners take to go from a brewery to a winery. And I think with the increased awareness for said trail, whatever we call it, motorists will also know we have to be careful on these roads because look, there's a little map here, there's a little pathway here that connects breweries and wineries in Southern Albemarle, or breweries and wineries in Western Albemarle, or breweries and wineries in Western Albemarle into Nelson County. And we know as car drivers, as truck drivers, as motorists, that we could potentially come across bicyclists or cyclists or runners along these roadways and these paths. That'll be something I bring up with Peter Krebs of the Piedmont Environmental Council here in a matter of moments. We had Neil Williamson and Sean Tubbs on a show we did this morning called Real Talk. And that show now archived or will be archived on ilovecville.com later today. I would encourage you guys to watch that show with Sean Tubbs and Neil Williamson and Keith Smith that I thought was fantastic. I mean, you have two journalists in Neil and Sean that know the community better than most. Their institutional memory speaks for themselves. And we talk zoning, we talk policy, we talk the engagement that neighborhood associations have, the influence that neighborhood associations have on the community. We put them in perspective from a Breezy Hill standpoint and the Glenmore Neighborhood Association, and from a Forest Lake standpoint and the density that was, lack of a better phrase, knocked down by the Forest Lakes Neighborhood Association. So a lot of good information on that show that's archived wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you find your social media, and of course on ilovecville.com. I think you're going to find today's interview equally as compelling with Peter Krebs. And Peter is a name that I've known from social media and from the Piedmont Environmental Council. And I'm very, very excited to interview this community organizer. We have him on the line now, Judah Wickower. So, Peter, I want to get into what the Piedmont Environmental Council is and some of the initiatives that you support. Before we do, how about just you, the man? Peter Krebs, who are you, your passions, your hobbies, your interests, before we talk shop?
Hey, so thanks for having me on the show. I'm so excited to be here. I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. My wife grew up right outside of Scottsville. We've lived a whole bunch of places, DC a bunch. I see myself as a DC guy. Then we lived in New York, and we've lived in Charlottesville since about 2009. I live in Belmont. I'm a runner, a walker, a biker. I've got a kid who's a junior at CHS. I'm a person who loves the community, loves, hanging out with my neighbors and being a part of a pretty special place.
Great intro right there, Peter Krebs. Bicycle safety in the news. We had the unfortunate passing of a city resident on Ivy Road earlier this week in a bicycle cyclist motorist accident. Yesterday we had Nancy Gill, former mayor of Scottsville, on the show, and Angela Lynn. Both of them are lobbyists for cyclist safety in Albemarle County in Central Virginia. Nancy had a niece that died in a cycling accident. Angela, her husband, serious spinal cord injury in a Western Albemarle cycling accident. So this is a hot topic now. Why don't we first start with this open-ended question? What does the Piedmont Environmental Council do first?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Piedmont Environmental Council is a nonprofit organization. We're about to enter our 50th year of doing good work in the community. We work to preserve rural areas, keeping them in farms, forestry, and natural systems, and also promoting healthy, compact, highly livable communities. So folks live in places like Charlottesville, the urban neighborhoods of Albemarle County, and leave the rural areas mainly for farming and forestry and environmental systems. And in order to have a really viable, vital, healthy place to live, we need to be well connected. We need everyday access to nature, and having it be easy and safe to get around without a car. So that's my main focus, is working on connectivity and smart land use in Charlottesville and urban Albemarle.
Okay, so cycling, an aspect of this.
Yes.
I want to talk about transportation and improving the transportation as well. But first, let's talk cycling. It seems from the layman's perspective, that we have clearly marked bicycle lanes throughout the city of Charlottesville. Then once you get to this city-county line, which frankly no one really knows where that city-county line is, you start to see those clearly marked bicycle lanes disappear. And Angela, in fact, called it yesterday the county to nowhere from a bicycle lane standpoint. The show is yours, Peter.
Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of work to do across the whole spectrum of urban and rural. In Charlottesville, the bike lanes are not as continuous as we might like. They ought to be protected, and I'm not rocking any boats by saying that. Everybody agrees that we need safe, protected infrastructure, and we need safe spaces in the rural area to ride. Now, it's a very common condition in America, and especially in Virginia, that where cities and counties meet are the worst, least safe places partly because it's difficult for cities and counties to work together. That's, again, not rocking a boat to say it's not easy for Charlottesville and Albemarle to work together. And then also just partly because of the way America was settled. Now, we can't do anything really in the immediate term about putting the sprawl genie back in the bottle. But we can work on having better infrastructure and policy, and especially we can work to have it easier for the city, the county, and I might add UVA to work together. So that's a big focus of my work, and I could talk some more about the dynamics of that if you'd like to.
I would love to talk about those dynamics. First, before we talk about the dynamics, we got some questions coming in about transportation. This is coming in from Laura. She says, Peter Krebs is an excellent guest to bring up on these topics. Can you ask Peter his take on transportation and whether or not this is something that should be much better solved with a public-private partnership as opposed to putting the onus on the municipalities?
Awesome segue, and that gets right into the dynamics a little bit. So we need the city, county, and university to work together, but we also need the public and private sector to work together, and also different versions of what we mean when we talk about the private sector. So the private sector is businesses. That's organizations like my organization, or also your organization. It's also small businesses, large businesses, and regular people as well. And of course, infrastructure like roads and sidewalks, that's mainly the domain of the government. But we've been working with the city and the county to think about that a little bit differently. So one example of that is that a couple years ago, the Albemarle County's Economic Development Office made an arrangement with Brian Roy and with Willow Tree to redevelop the Woolen Mills site, which is a gorgeous, awesome place. But instead of giving them a huge tax break, they worked together on infrastructure to create a bridge over Morris Creek, which advocates have been working on for literally decades. So that is kind of an example of a public-private partnership, and it's one that's founded on a new idea of economic growth that starts with healthy, productive people, and it's working to beautiful effect in Woolen Mills.
More comments coming in here for you, Peter. We'll get to these comments here in a matter of moments. I've been in this area for 21 years. And for 21 years, Peter, we've been talking about improved public transportation. And for 21 years, we've been talking about improved pedestrian, runner, and cycle safety in the area. Why does it seem, and maybe this is a misconception, why does it seem that there seems to be more of a priority within the city as opposed to Albemarle County that surrounds the city when it comes to pedestrian and bicycle safety?
Yeah, so I think you would have a full spectrum of ideas about that based on who you talk to. But for me, it comes down to a couple of things. Number one, on a very fundamental level, Charlottesville is a city and it does its own infrastructure. So it's a lot more direct and slightly more immediate return from thought to execution, whereas the county is relying on VDOT for its transportation, and also VDOT is primarily an auto-centric, obviously, organization. Now, the county has recently added a bunch of money to its CIP for what they're calling quality of life enhancements, but I would call those infrastructure. So that's like having sidewalks on Avon Street. You're not seeing them yet, but they're being planned and they're badly needed. Same thing up on Rio Road. Getting Biscuit Run Park open and getting it well connected to the community. Those are city-like things that you're starting to see on the horizon with the county.
What's the role of the Rivanna Trail in solving some of these transportation and or commuting conundrums? So I brought it up yesterday with Nancy and Angela. The Rivanna Trail does not go close to Scottsville and is certainly not a part of Western Albemarle, but this Rivanna Trail is very much in and out of the city and the urban ring within Albemarle, certainly north of the city and northern Albemarle. Have you guys thought of a plan to utilize the Rivanna Trail in some capacity?
Yeah, so multiple levels of that. So the Rivanna Trail was conceived largely as a way to get away from town quickly. Like, imagine walking down to your block, into your block, and feeling like you're on the Appalachian Trail. So it wasn't really thought of as a transportation resource, but now a lot of folks are saying, well, there are pieces of this that could really maybe be useful for transportation. So precisely as you mentioned, the northward spur that goes from, we'll say, the John Warner Parkway up toward Belvedere and beyond. The county has plans for a greenway connection there, or there are some sewer lines in the region that are flat and maybe suitable for being used as a walking and biking corridor. The trail at Riverview Park is sort of a proof of concept of that. Or that little piece of greenway along McIntyre Road, Shanks Greenway, that too was a trail that was built on a sewer line as a sort of proof of concept. And then that sort of launched the John Warner Parkway Trail, which is extremely popular. And that is indeed a suitable transportation resource. So I do think we're seeing a bit of a transition, and my only sad thing is that it's frustratingly slow. It takes a long time.
So could we see the right? So what would be the best use of the RT? Do you think? I mean, would it be strictly cyclists, walkers, pedestrian as a way to potentially get them off of busier roads for added safety, or is it optimized in a different manner?
So for me, that optimization would be having what we call a braided system, where you have a facility that's appropriate for walking and biking, pushing a stroller, being pushed in a wheelchair, right? We're thinking about like 8-month-old to 88 years old, that. And then nearby, a more rustic experience where it's maybe up and down and going through the woods and a more sort of hikerly experience. Again, the John Warner Parkway has that, where you have a road nearby, but not on it. You have a 10-foot wide paved asphalt path. And then winding through the woods along the creek, you have a single track rustic footpath. That would be the most optimal. And we can't do it everywhere because of terrain, but there are certain opportunities.
Our guest, guys, is Peter Krebs from the Piedmont Environmental Council. How about some insight that you can offer with the Albemarle County Municipality and the autonomy or lack thereof it has with its roads in the county? We were talking yesterday, or one of our viewers made this comment yesterday. Can't Albemarle just choose to widen the roads 6 feet on either side to get a bike lane on every side? And then Nancy and Angela have said, unfortunately, it's not that easy. VDOT has a lot of say into what's happening. And on top of that, you have the extremely costly expense of underground utilities and or easements that could potentially be needed to widen these roads if they get into the land of property owners next to said roads. The whole topic to you, Peter.
Okay. So I would say most of that is true, except that because the county doesn't have an actual road building public works department, it's not the case that VDOT has a say. It's more like Albemarle County has a say about its own roads, and VDOT actually owns, operates, and builds the roads. And so having something like Albemarle adding a road building public works department is way above my pay grade. I don't even know how to contemplate that. But what I will say from a cycling and walking and running perspective, what the county can do is having a robust portion of its CIP, which it's made a small good start that is used to build off-road facilities, like I was talking about along Avon Street, like the path to Biscuit Run, like the Belvedere Trail. The county can build that. It can work with its parks department to do parkway connections, like the Biscuit Run connection. And also it can work very aggressively with VDOT to apply for grants and paying attention to the rural paving schedule and the like as well. One thing I've been hearing a lot about lately, and it relates to something I heard earlier on the show about connecting wineries and having a sort of
like a branded trail,
for example, but having a distinctively rustic experience through the use of gravel roads, like sometimes not adding more infrastructure is the right thing to do. I'm hearing a lot of chatter in my community about being careful about maintaining gravel and the rural characteristics of certain roads, because a gravel road is going to be a slow road and probably a safer route. So thinking about stringing together destinations through primary routes, but maybe more so through low stress routes. But again,
do you like that idea?
Yeah, I mean, as a runner, one of the reasons that we love being here is because there are great places to go run in the rural area. I love going out on like Dickwoods Road or Ridge Road, and east of town there's Green Springs, and south of town there's Keene, and good places to get out of town that are right nearby, that are quiet. Our next step as a community is to make it easier to get to those destinations, hopefully just by walking out your door and jumping on your bike or throwing on your running shoes, rather than getting in your car to go meet your friends, to go for a walk. Like, that's a little bit absurd, and residents want something better than that.
Okay, well, I'm learning a great deal from you already, and I would imagine a key part of your role is to educate the community on various ideas that are being considered, basically serve as an evangelist for these ideas. And I've announced that I'm going to run for Board of Supervisors in the Scottsville district. So I'm taking the ideas, I'm learning from our guests and trying to bring the best ideas into the platform to get more amplification behind them. So the idea that Angela and Nancy were presented yesterday was if we can create a branded trail Andre Xavier's watching right now. He says Route 231 would be perfect for this. Andre, no, I think it's a great idea. No coincidence that his brewery, Patch Brewery, is going to be located off 231. So Andre Xavier, I appreciate your chutzpah there. I mean, if you're able to get something that is called the Albemarle County Cycling Trail, and we're able to allocate taxpayer dollars to have more signage on those trails, and then we're able to create a website and a threefold pamphlet that folks can have where these are the breweries and the wineries you can stop for lunch, for drink, to rehydrate, to use the bathroom, to spend some money as well. I would think that local government could get behind that and use taxpayer resources for that. And even potentially more importantly, if this trail gets enough awareness, then motorists who do happen to be utilizing their vehicles on this trail at least have the common sense to understand that there's going to be a lot of bike riders and runners and walkers here.
Yeah. So I think you're right on the money from the perspective that economic development begins with healthy bodies, like food and drink and fresh air and all of that stuff is a moneymaker. It's you get a good return on investment spending money that way. We have to work on awareness, and we have to work on policy, but we can't not do the infrastructure, because even imagining that we get a situation where everybody's driving real carefully, everything's well marked. There are many people that would never walk or bike on, we'll say 250. Like if 250 just had a wider shoulder, folks wouldn't take their grandkids there. We need places where someone can be in their wheelchair or in a stroller and feel like totally safe, totally in the mix. So while I agree that in the short term we could use signage and stuff like that to direct people to low stress routes, or to, shall we say, lower the stress level on the routes we have. I personally think that's like ought to be a pretty quick way to get some improvement. No amount of doing that is going to make the roads equitable for people across age and ability. And we really need spaces that are available for everybody, regardless of disability or age or youth or any of that stuff.
So are you advocating then for the potential closure to motorist traffic of certain roads that are not highly trafficked, or roads that we can say no vehicles here, these are for cyclists and runners only?
Well, in a very small scope, I think it would be interesting to consider allowing certain neighborhood streets to be for residents only, limiting through traffic on those. And you see it all across the country, like on a Sunday, for example, they'll put up temporary barriers and allow only or limit through traffic on a neighborhood street, you might say. In a sort of big gesture, rural way, I think it would be simply saying that we should be circumspect about not doing improvements that are designed to speed up traffic, because high-speed traffic is
dangerous.
Is what? Yes, but we know the data shows us that speed is what is the problem.
What's UVA's role here? We were talking yesterday that University of Virginia at the start of COVID had essentially a transportation line with a large share of their employees working in Buckingham and or Southern Albemarle County. They were doing a van or bus service with stops in Buckingham, a stop in Scottsville, to help get their team members to the university. Now, unfortunately, COVID has kiboshed that in the short term. We're not sure if that's a long-term kiboshing, but what is the university's role here?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, remembering what I said about how everybody has a part to play. And so UVA is the largest employer. So apart from their status as a university, they are a huge employer that has employees traveling from all across the region, as you pointed out, contributing to vehicle traffic and congestion and all of those things. So everything they can do to make it easier for people to commute in a smart way, whether that's by rideshare, as you mentioned, and also telecommuting, which I think a lot of people understand about telecommuting where they might not have 2 years ago. I think those things help. And then also, let's be honest, UVA is a huge player in the area. They're almost like a government, and I would like to see them contributing more to infrastructure. The whole West Main streetscape project, for example, really has a lot stronger chance of success if we could get UVA to make good on their commitment to contribute significant monies to that. So, again, it's policy and it's infrastructure, but we have to be working on both of those things.
Where is the mindset? Is this a mindset that should be considered? I mean, I've come from the small and medium-sized business sector. I mean, I can go into my business and say, we're going to do this today, and the team responds, and we start acting on the plan of attack that I walked in and say we're going to do. It's much more difficult for a municipality or a university to do something like that. Is one of the ways we solve this transportation conundrum, is it maybe utilizing public dollars to incentivize a business or a private entity to create a better widget, for lack of better phrase, for transportation?
I think that's certainly is a great way. That's what Willow Tree did. But also, I think there's a great business case for businesses apart from any kind of incentive. So I was talking to, when I first started, and forgive me, it's been a while since I had this conversation. I forgot the number the business owner cited to me. But he said that he spends something like $1,500 a year per employee just to park that employee. What if that employer said, you know what, I'm going to take away your parking space and I'm going to put $1,200 of those $1,500 back in your pocket. And I, as the business owner, am going to keep the $300, right? And you'll walk, you use that money to buy a bike or whatever. And so that's, I think, would be an example of how the business can do more and have it be a smart business move without any involvement by the government at all.
I mean, I was brainstorming and prepping for today's show. You take somebody like, who I believe is still watching, Andre Xavier. This guy owns multiple businesses. One of the businesses he owns is CVille Hop-On Tours. And they do these, essentially it's ride share to breweries and wineries. You know CVille Hop-On Tours.
I've been wanting to do it. I want this COVID thing to be over, only so I can do one of those tours. I'm fine with the rest of it, but I got to get on one of those.
So it's basically right up your alley. You pay for the seat instead of having to rent the bus in totality, which means the barrier of entry is much more affordable for everybody. And on top of that, it's up your alley again. We take a bunch of individual cars going to the brewery, and we put them all on a bus. So I guess where I'm thinking with this is the demand.
And we eliminate drunk driving.
And we eliminate drunk driving, even most importantly. Well, thank you for emphasizing that, most importantly. So where I'm going with this is these buses are much more utilized, as we know, Saturday, Sunday, and oftentimes are sitting in very highly visible parking lots on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not doing anything. Like, can we not incentivize, like, this is just one example. It's not the end-all, be-all example. It's just one example. Like, incentivize these two gentlemen who have an established track record of success in small business and say, why don't we get these buses on the road somehow and work on getting some of the folks that are living in the outer counties that are doing this because the quality of life is good and probably most importantly because their cost of living is more attainable and affordable in the outer county. But that money they're saving is being wasted, if you may, by getting in a car, driving the 45 minutes to the epicenter of employment, and losing the money on wear and tear of the vehicle, the gasoline, all that 100%. Stuff, all that stuff.
Yeah. So essentially, we take the operating expenses of 15 people, each operating their own vehicle. And you just do it one time. You just are operating one vehicle. Now you're moving 15 people. It makes a whole lot of sense. And so the planning district is about to launch a big regional transit study to sort of relook at, in a fundamental way, how we're doing transit in the area. And I have to think that this like point-to-point style of transit where you're going from like Crozes downtown to one drop-off point, like common start, common destination. I think that is going to be a part of the mix. In addition to the traditional transit where it's like a line with multiple stops along the way. Like, I think both of those models make sense. And we're seeing it with Crozes. We saw it with 29 North. You mentioned the Buckingham one. I could, maybe it exists already, but what about Lake Monticello? There are certain common sources and common destinations where we could put a whole bunch of people together and just use one vehicle. And by the way, those buses typically have a rack and you can throw your bike on it and get that final mile or whatever on your bike.
I'm thoroughly enjoyed this interview. We're 32 minutes in here. I'm grateful for your time. I got a couple more questions that I want to learn from you from. What is your take on the best use of Biscuit Run?
I would love to see Biscuit Run open immediately. If not immediately, then as soon as possible. The county has a very ambitious master plan for Biscuit Run Park. It sort of has a bit of many different things. It has some soccer fields. It has many trails. It has some areas that are left completely alone for nature. It has some wildflower meadows and that sort of thing. But it's a multi-million-dollar project, and it's going to take a while to implement. I would like for them to open it in the most basic way as soon as possible, and then work with volunteers and unroll the rest of the master plan over time. For me, open in a basic way means three things. It means having a gravel parking lot, not a fancy parking lot, a gravel parking lot, maybe with porta potties that are, again, upgraded in the future to vault toilets. It would be connected via a stream valley trail to Wegmans and the shopping center.
Fifth Street Station.
The rest of the city. Yeah, Fifth Street Station via an old roadbed that's already there. That's number 2. That's attainable. And number 3, also a trail connection to Hickory Street. So people in the 5th Street corridor, especially folks who live in Southwood, would also be able to get into Biscuit Run. Again, using trails that already exist and simply need upgrading by adding a bridge over a stream instead of a rock hop and that sort of thing. that's what I want for Biscuit Run, and I think we should be able to do it first half of 2022.
Well, those 3 points that you made probably wouldn't require a ton of money, and the action plan is tangible and reasonable from a timeline standpoint.
And not only is it not prohibitively expensive, the county's already allocated the money. The county has I think $1.5 or $1.8 million already allocated for a phase 0.5 of Biscuit Run Park. Just need to get it done.
I got one more question, and then give you a final word for you to go anywhere you want here. How about Darden Tao Park? What's the best use here? That park seems to be being underutilized as well.
Yeah, so Darden Tao is interesting because one of the things that I frequently rant and rave about is how most of the county's parks are in the rural area where it's a park you drive to. Biscuit Run is going to be different than that. Biscuit Run is going to be connected to neighborhoods. Darden Tao is already like that a little
Are
bit.
Darden Tao, and I don't mean to interrupt you, are Darden Tao and Biscuit Run considered in the urban ring? Okay,
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah, they're inside the urban ring. And so Darden Tao is like could be a park for the Pantops residents, right? But I bet most Pantops residents get there because, again, not good sidewalks connecting.
And it closes at dusk.
Yeah. And Darden Tao also, I don't know if you've been to this place, but one of my favorite places to walk or run or ride my bike is the trail along the Rivanna River on the county side. It's called the Old Mills Trail. It begins at Darden Tao and follows the Rivanna Trail south and currently stops at the foot of Martha Jefferson Hospital, where we hope to add a pedestrian bridge. Eventually, that trail will continue south all the way to Milton, and that'll be exciting.
That's a big-time trail system.
Big time. That's like a total of, I think it is 7 miles total.
Wow.
All along the river. It'll be beautiful, hopefully in the not too distant future.
So is the vision then someone who lives in Milton, Shadwell, or eastern Albemarle County can pick up that trail like around the Clifton and then walk that trail all the way to Freebridge?
Yes, and from Freebridge, many possibilities from there, or onward to Darden Tao Park. So exciting. Really, really exciting.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing that? That's a great idea.
We're doing it. We're going to do it.
When is that going to happen?
Not all the pieces are quite in line, but next couple of years. So as you may know, the Clifton Inn is
massive remodel and renovation project.
Yeah, remodel and a rezoning. And since I don't work for the county, I can say this: I would love for the Clifton Inn to proffer some land for a parking lot that would be a trailhead for this trail, and would be a great economic benefit for the Clifton Inn. Like, I would love to be able to ride my bike to the Clifton Inn. I would take my out-of-town guests. I would have my out-of-town guests just go stay at the Clifton Inn, and then you can ride your bike to have dinner with me and my wife. Like, it's perfect. And it's like, we're right there. We're so close. We just need to make that extra step.
I love this guy. I love Peter Krebs and what he's saying on this show here. And to give some background on the Clifton guys, they're adding more rooms. They're adding a music venue, and they're adding a miniature conference center to the Clifton Inn. So it's very much going to be...
And glamping.
Yeah, and glamping, and high-end camping. He's exactly right. So this is very much going to be this little epicenter of like fun and food and business during the week and live music, and having some kind of trail system that connects eastern Albemarle County, where I live, to the urban ring. And heck, he's exactly right. Once you take that path, once it's done, from eastern Albemarle County and Milton to Freebridge, you can hop on the RT with a hop, skip, and a jump, or you can just go down 250 or up High Street to get to downtown. So the world is really your oyster at that point. Dude, I got to get you back on this show. You are...
Hey, there's one more piece that I don't want to, jank your whole show.
Oh, please do. The whole show is you.
There's another piece to that makes it even better. So we didn't even talk about the river itself. There's right now there's a very primitive canoe takeout there. What if we had an actual boat landing there, so like folks could use the Ravenna River Company and tube down to the Clifton Inn, or a canoe, or one of my colleagues was talking about Ravenna River Company could have people float down and then use the same truck they're going to use to drive the boats back, drive bikes down, and people could bike back. So it would be like a boat biking loop. It would be awesome.
It would almost be like, is the word gondola? Almost like a mini gondola system here. That's a topic for a different show here. I want to give you...
You are an entrepreneur. That would be...
Well, I mean, I always envision kind of like an elevated, almost ski lift scenario in Charlottesville, Albemarle County, where we could get folks in almost like... what are they called on a ski? You know what I'm talking about? Those
I know
elevated cars. Yeah. It's way, way, way down the road. All right, so anywhere you want to go, Piedmont Environmental Council, Peter Krebs, anything that's important to you, the show is yours, sir.
Yeah, so one of the ways that we're working to bridge this gap of like government, different kinds of organizations working together, we formed a group that's called the Piedmont Mobility Alliance, which is a coalition of groups ranging from, Centera Martha Jefferson's part of it, my organization, the Ravenna Trails Foundation, the Trail Runners, Wegmans, City, County, University. It's like this forum where we're working together to promote active lifestyles. And I'll go into the chat for this show, and I'll post a link to that in there. Piedmont Mobility Council, we're meeting on Thursday, April 29th. I'll post a link to that. And then May is Bike Month as well. And we'll be having an event called Cycling for Sustainable Cities. And that's on Friday, May 7th on Zoom. And I'll post a link for those as well. And as well as a couple of ways for people to get involved. They could join my mailing list. They could join the Mobility Alliance. They could sign a petition supporting the Regional Bicycle Pedestrian Plan and learn more.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you send those links to the Facebook message chain that you and I are chatting with, we're airing this show on 15 Facebook pages, 15 Twitter accounts, 15 Instagrams, LinkedIn. So the best way would be is if Judah gets that content from the messenger, and then he can aggregate it in each of the areas that the show is aired and archived on.
Awesome. That's perfect. So that way, I can read off some URLs, but I think people want something clickable.
That they can see, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. But the main URL, and I will read this one off, is pecva.org. That's PECVA.org/CVille Greenways, all one word. that's the like HQ to get all the info.
Okay, and Judah got that. He's writing that down now. All right, hey, you're a joy and a breath of fresh air to interview. May I reach out to you in the future about these topics?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I was also thinking it would be cool if you want to dig. We could talk general like we did, but if you ever want to dig deep on a specific question, I could also bring some friends that are experts on those deep topics. If you're
I would love to.
Ever interested. Like, there are people who know way more about rural cycling than I do, and we could hear straight from them if you want.
I would love to do that, and everyone's whatever everyone's comfortable with. We could host a 4-person in-person roundtable where we're all about 7 feet apart. And then do it all in person and just have like a conversation, like 4 people at a coffee shop or at the bar talking about this topic.
That would be so cool. I love it.
Me too. I love it too. Peter, thank you for the time.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And, Bike CVille.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, you
all
too.
Right, thank you. Peter Krebs, guys. Piedmont Environmental Council. Good show today. The show's going to be archived on ilovecville.com. What we're trying to do with the platform is we're trying to bring topics to the forefront with experts in those topics. That's all we're trying to do. And the long-form content that we have, this long-form platform, allows us to really dig deep into stuff without having to worry about a commercial break or a 30-second soundbite, or 30 seconds allotted to a story, or 18 inches or 20 inches to a newspaper story. It really offers unlimited potential. We will continue doing this on the I Love CVille Network. It's a weekend. I encourage everyone to keep it local, to stay safe, to support the businesses and the community members here that make the community special. And I'm really, really, really liking this idea of creating a cycling, pedestrian, runner, road system, trail system, pathway system that is advertised, branded, marketed, that creates safety for the cyclists, runners, and walkers, that drives incremental revenue for the breweries, the wineries, the eateries that are on this branded trail. That could be a trail or a branded mechanism that is a mid-Atlantic draw, North Carolina, Northern Virginia, Tennessee. People put their bikes on their cars. They come over here and say, for 2 to 3 days, we're going to hype on this Central Virginia cycling ale trail, or this Albemarle County cycling beer and wine trail, and we're going to ride our bikes, or we're going to walk in our tennis shoes from Ragged Mountain Running Shop or for wherever, and we're going to go from brewery to winery to eatery to brewery to winery to eatery, and then back to our bed and breakfast, and we're going to do it while on our bicycles. The focus on sports tourism, and I think this falls under that sports tourism umbrella, is not being prioritized enough in the county. And that's something that I'm going to commit myself to doing here through the network and through the plans to run for Board of Supervisors. Next week is already full with guests. I'm excited for you to join us on the I Love CVille Network. Next week, remember Women Changing Our World, 10:15 a.m. on Monday with Kelly Jackson and Jamie Schwartz, and then the I Love CVille show at 12:30 on Monday. You guys have a good weekend. Take care.